The next three programs in this course are about race and representation. In the first, you're shown a rather novel approach to tackling issues of racism in the all-white school through the use of images of race, nation and empire.
In this collection, I took the march past of all the races, all the countries. So many recipes for civilization, strange formulae which allowed one to hold between thumb and forefinger the essence of climates and provinces, empires and continents. In possessing these images, I experienced the sweetness of domination over lands and peoples, the thorn of that frustration that can only be healed by power. I, as a 12-year-old who owned nothing, suddenly wanted to conquer the whole world, not a square inch less.
Thompson, what do we know about pygmies?
Pygmies care nothing for their own land or people. They are cruel to one another. They throw stones and shoot arrows. The children do not tell each other stories.
A geography lesson in the early years of this century. And if you had been in school then, you might well have listened to teachers like this.
Some of them are indeed civilized. Some of them have civilization, but most of them, Standard 5, are savages. They resist our influences. However, Standard 5, there are some men...
For the first time around the turn of the century, images of black people were widely disseminated by means of education and new forms of popular culture. And it was through nation and empire that these images were conveyed to children of school age.
Civilized men. But by far the best is the white man.
Outside and sometimes even inside the classroom, the everyday currencies through which images of black people were collected, exchanged and passed from hand to hand gave a more intimate sense of race and empire. But this trade in images also served to underwrite a certain image of trade. Trade as a civilizing process. Trade as a free and fair exchange between the raw material provided by the colonies and the finished products marked Made in England. And nowhere was this lesson driven home more strongly than in the classroom.
Why are they supreme, Standard 5? Because he has the best laws, the best knowledge of farming and trade. He is the best looking, and he worships the one true God.
Learning about the ideas and images that were prevalent around the turn of the century is of obvious interest to historians. But could this kind of material be used in schools? What response would it evoke in a group of white school children today? Could it, for example, help children in their understanding of what has shaped British society? Or should the whole lot be confined to the dustbins of history?
The British men stand
If you just censor these images, replace negative stereotypes with positive ones, that doesn't do anything to engage with the real issues. If you're moralistic about them, you may actually strengthen their hold, especially amongst young people in all white schools who don't take kindly to being preached at. We have to look at contemporary images and we have to set those in some kind of historical perspective. Young people are particularly influenced by whether it's television or films or whatever, and I think it's important to develop an approach to working with them around that imagery which takes account of their own cultures and where they're coming from in looking at those images today, and to set that in a history which makes more sense of it. I think it's especially important in all white schools because it's in those schools that, from my own research and those of others, we've found that the culture of racism is most entrenched, most taken for granted, most part of the common sense.
The historic town of Chester in the northwest of England has a mainly white population, and the local schools reflect this fact.
The school is approximately 850 students. The students come from a fairly tight catchment area in the locality. There's a fairly wide socio-economic grouping of students. In terms of race, we do a number of units of work with students across a whole range of subjects, particularly English, but we feel that it should arise naturally out of what we do. Naturally in English through studying things like To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. The project we're just about to start is an experimental one. We wouldn't attempt a project like this on our own in school. Follow-up work later in school will be done, and at the very end each student will be debriefed individually.
We're going to go to have a look at this exhibition called Black Markets, which is a...
Phil Cohen is an educationalist who has been researching new teaching methods for understanding popular racism. His work has shown that there is great potential in using historical sources in schools.
Very closely at some of the older imagery.
Queen's Park High School is interested in the work that Phil Cohen has been doing, and he is now working on part of a project being tackled by a group of fourth years.
Looking at images of black people in the past and in the present, and looking at where those images came from, how they've changed, how they influence our attitudes, and what we think.
Phil starts the exercise by getting the group to think about any images in advertising that they may have seen recently.
Which feature black people on them. James.
The Malibu advert.
The Malibu ad, right. Can you describe that for us?
Well, there are all the black people are on the beach and they're stacking up the boxes of Malibu.
Right.
And they're sitting on it.
They're sitting on the boxes. They're not actually drinking the drink.
They're describing the drink.
They're describing. What do they say about it?
Ultraviolet. And topped with Jamaican rum.
Right. Why do you think that the film crew go all the way to, say, Barbados even, right, and actually shoot an advertisement? The starting point is working off advertisements. It can be working off record covers and working from them to deconstruct those images. I think it's just one part of the equation. It's not the entire answer. There isn't an entire answer, but it's just one way to start. If something's exotic, why should it make us want to have it? If a drink is exotic, or... Is it just because they're far away? Was it because they're different from us in some way? But right now I want to talk a bit about the past, where images of black people would have come from.
The group are then introduced to the idea of the British Empire. First of all, they have to colour in where they think the empire was on a world map.
And I'd like to know if any of you can see any places on the map that you think were part of the British Empire at some time. Yeah.
After the initial introduction to the project, the group travelled to Manchester. Right in the centre of the city is the Corner House Arts Complex. Currently on show in the art galleries is an exhibition called Black Markets, which looks at images of black people in advertising from the late 1800s to the present day. The exhibition's aim is to illustrate how colonialism and the ideology of white supremacy have underpinned the representation of black people, and to trace the roots of some of the images we see in advertising today. The idea of empire was actively promoted in many products, along with the portrayal of black people as inferior, ridiculous, and sometimes childlike.
The key issue policies being the whites black out and abuse the black boy.
Yeah, so that one's the same.
For the first part of the exercise, the pupils divide up into small groups to consider some of the historical images that have been chosen.
I didn't like it because the way they like trying to get them to be clean, as if they should be white. You know, they're trying to scrub the colour off them.
They're assuming it's dirty because they're assuming black's dirty, and because it's not the same colour as their own skin or whatever. I disagree with that. It's wrong.
We're just saying that that black should be white. There's nothing wrong with being black. Why shouldn't they be black?
I think the Oxo one's a bit should have been banned.
There's just no need for him to be called Golly as well.
Well, what's Golly one?
Because that's what one is.
And that's 10 little nigger boys.
Yeah. That's just disgusting.
And the Blackjacks.
I hadn't seen that.
Look at that.
There's no need.
Later, they move on to look at some of the contemporary images that are in the exhibition. These include modern advertising and also work by black artists and photographers.
I'd never ever go there because I think it's stupid. I would never ever send a black boy in the water to go and get my golf ball, which only costs about £2 or something. I'd never do it. And if it was really, really expensive, I'd just go in and get it myself. I wouldn't send anyone else to go get it.
After spending some time analysing the images in 2s and 3s, the group then meet together to discuss their findings. Phil concentrates their attention on the modern advertising that's on display and asks them if they now see some of those images in a different way.
I didn't realise that racism could be put into holiday adverts where they've got this little kid in this pool with lilies surrounding him, and he's holding a golf ball where it says if you lose your golf ball it bounces back. You get all these people to get this child to jump in the river and find their golf ball.
There aren't a lot of positive sides in that exhibition, which there should have been, but the one of Lady Thompson was good because that was showing that there are positive sides.
I thought there were positive sides to it because there was a poster of a black man jumping in the air from the job club saying that he got a job after 6 weeks in the job club, and it showed that black people don't just have to be good at sport, that you can be good, you can be clever as well.
I didn't think that was a positive one because it's implying that all black people are ending up in the job centres. It's easier for the white people to get jobs. I don't think it was positive because, well, they're in the job centre, so how can that be positive?
While you were looking around the exhibition, I had a chance to look at the... If you're working with imagery as powerful as this, I think it's always a good idea to use some kind of framing device to help them get some distance from it. In this case, I used a sample of quotes from the visitor's book to help them articulate their position. So that was from it now. What do you feel about that?
Racism is two-sided. We're against, well, some of us, the white people, are against the black people. And it's exactly the same with the blacks. They're against the white people. So you've got to see both sides of the story. So like every story has two sides. So
why should it be offensive to white people when it was set up to show the racism against black people? It was there to show how we treat them, not how they treat us, because they don't treat us, well, most of them, with any maliciousness. So it was just set up to show how we treat them.
We've been talking about how persuasive are these images, isn't it?
So far the exercise has been aimed at getting the pupils to look at the images in a fairly detached, analytical way. Now it is about to move on to the next phase, in which they will get closer to the material that they have been discussing.
Don't like the idea of that, because that's saying it's empire going to see.
First of all, they are given another chance to look at the historical images on display and to think about the empire and the role it played in shaping people's perceptions of the world.
It's got the black people on it with the white people, and they're serving them, and that's very patriotic, and it's just saying that they're just second-class citizens.
Same, this one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's bad. It hasn't changed much from now and then, because now they've got the PG tips with the woman on the front, and then it was just the same, except for the one over there.
And the way they put the speech impediment there.
Yeah, that's bad. I don't like that.
Saying that they speak sort of common-like, isn't it?
Yeah, trying to put them down.
Yeah.
Like our nans and granddads,
Times
they
changing.
pass their views down to our mums and dads, but our generation's much more wiser than say 50 or 60 years ago, and we have different views on different aspects to what our parents would think, you know. And so maybe in a couple of years when we've got our grandchildren, they might not think anything about this racism thing, because it just wouldn't happen because we wouldn't talk about it.
Then the group are drawn together once more as the next part of the exercise is explained to them.
Maybe read them in a different way. The next part of the project is we're going to go back in time, go back to a period in which the British Empire was very strong. There were very few, there was a distinct black community living in Britain, but it was small, and the majority of people, white English people in Britain, their main understanding of black people would have been through the images of black people that were in circulation. These weren't necessarily in big ads, they would have been in maybe small things like cigarette cards, and postcards and things like that. And what we're going to be doing is going back to a school room around 1900 in Empire Day, where they celebrated, what a great thing this British Empire was. Hold on a second. So you'll be a bit into the Empire Day thing, right?
Yeah.
It's only roles, this, okay? So just remember, we've got to have different people taking different roles.
Yeah, like some people are more interested
Some
in
people are more
school
interested than others.
others
That's right.
just
Yeah.
like the
Right.
The cannibal.
Cannibal?
Yeah, it shows the lunchtime as if black people eat white people.
Yeah.
Cannibalism.
That's a bit.
To prepare the group for the role play that they're going to take part in, Phil shows them some of the everyday items that were in common circulation at the time.
Empire on the front of it, and then in the back it says, since added to the British Empire, Cyprus has enjoyed a measure of peace and security such as never before experienced. The native police are mounted and present a most picturesque appearance.
So it gives you a little kind of version of what's supposed to be happening in Cyprus as part of the kind of colonial system.
The idea of reconstruction and approaching history through experiencing what life felt like for the people who were living then is one that has been used in schools for several years. And for this kind of work, Phil Cohen feels the technique has special advantages.
I think one of the problems in a lot of anti-racist work is that it has a very rationalistic approach to tackling racism. It's about giving people the correct facts or more information, or the reasons for immigration and so on, and hoping that that in itself will change people's attitudes or change the way they actually look at the world. And I think I found from my own experience, and I think a lot of teachers will also say this, that actually the popular culture of racism works at another level, a level of kind of fantasy, level in which of pleasure that actually children, young people, and not only them, get out of actually handling this kind of imagery. And unless we can work at that level and engage with that level, then I think we're not actually engaging with the real problem. So I hope that this sort of exercise will actually help to do that.
Empire Day, 24th of May. Don't give us a holiday, we'll all run away.
Very amusing, children, very amusing.
So in order to give the pupils from Queen's Park a greater understanding into the ideas behind some of the images they had been looking at, they went to a living history museum to experience what a school geography lesson would have been like around the turn of the century. The reconstruction was based on accounts written about education at the time and on old school textbooks.
Excellent. Boys, you may enter the classroom. Remember your postures, boys. Good morning, Standard 5.
Good morning, Miss Carlton.
Be seated. Excellent. Standard 5, as today is Empire Day and the headmaster will be coming in to speak with you, I wish to do a quick hand and nail inspection. So place your hands on the desk in front of you, children. Excellent hands there. Excellent. Fin front of the class, boy. Hold your hands out, boy. Those hands are filthy, boy. Like little black Sambo. Except little black Sambo can't help the colour he is. He can't wash his colour off. You can. They are filthy, boy. To your seat. Sometimes I wonder, Standard 5, whether you're any better than the savages of the jungle. Today's lesson, children, is on geography. Just as there are differences in the plants and animals of various parts of the world, so are there differences in mankind. The men of different races of the world fall into 5 categories. These are the white men, the black men, the red men, the yellow men, and the brown men. How many races?
I haven't really had much contact with black people, but I don't think now I would ever be prejudiced towards them, because I know how terrible white people can be towards them, so I've got to try and do something against that.
The Empire Standard 5 includes the men from all races. The savages, examples of savages are in Australia, the Aborigines. In Africa, we have the Pygmies. We have the American Indians. But not all men are the same, Standard 5. What are you playing with there, girl? We do not bring things into the classroom. Put it in front of you on the desk. The bogeyman, Standard 5. We no longer believe in such superstitious nonsense. I see some of you still do believe in it. Well, perhaps your parents used it when you were little to frighten you, or when you were not paying attention.
Now I can think of it, I've probably come out with remarks that I've said which have been racist, and I think, God, I said that, you know, I wish I hadn't said that. I don't want to be racist.
To tell Miss Carlton to which race they belong. Pass it along, children. Yes, girl.
Savage, miss.
The savage, excellent. Pass them along. Girl, what are you playing with? You do not play with things in lesson. Standard 5, as I mentioned earlier, as it is Empire Day, the headmaster is going to come now and speak with you shortly.
Good morning, children.
Good morning, sir.
You may sit down. Today, as you know, is a special day. It's a day in which we come together to celebrate and to give thanks for everything which has made our country great. For the industry and trade which have given us prosperity. The point about doing this kind of historical reconstruction is to help children make the connections between the past and the present. For example, they could go on to look at the historical origins of the white working class as a dark continent and images of colonial populations. Racism may be part of our national heritage, but that doesn't mean that history has to repeat itself. For only the empire makes it possible for you to enjoy an education.
In this program, we have taken a brief look at a project which is aimed at making pupils more aware of how images of black people circulate in white society.
Our nation, our race, and even the empire itself.
There are many possible approaches to this process, and no one correct way. Perhaps, in any case, the real learning goes on off stage, in impromptu discussions among friends, and in the arguments that rage silently in people's heads.
Experience which ensure that when principles have to be upheld, when good has to be defended, when evil has to be overcome, the British will take up arms.
We've learnt about different things on how the white people discriminate the black people and how they talk to them, which is really cruel.
And treat them unfairly.
You may feel, having watched this exercise, that it leaves a number of problems unresolved. For example, how much real purchase does it offer on issues of contemporary racism? Might it only reinforce racism rather than shift racial identities? Or might it only induce feelings of guilt about the past? This, after all, is only one amongst many different approaches, and Phil Cohen himself has pioneered a number of alternative methods. Also, you might like to consider to what extent it implies that the only alternative to racist imagery is a creation of positive images about black people. We take up this issue in the next two programs, where Kobina Mercer introduces the work of a number of black filmmakers, artists and photographers.
Steamers with England's own grain up and down the great seas.
We are going to fetch you your bread and your butter, your beef, pork and mutton, eggs, apples and cheese.
And where will you fetch it from, all you big steamers? And where shall I write to you when you are away?
We fetch it from Melbourne,